Okay, good morning. As I was introduced, my background is revenue management. I grew up in revenue management. Actually, that's not true. My first job in the hotel was a chef, and somehow I ended up here. But I moved somehow from that career into finance and fell in love with numbers and data, actually back before data was popular, or even really existed. And revenue management probably first became a science probably in 1991 with the airlines. It had moved into hotels in 1996, and that's when we really started finding out about hotels. Someone then came to me at one point and said, hey, look, why don't you move out of finance and move into this field called revenue management, which we're just going to start up. And that's how it got me into revenue management. And then 5 years later, I found myself in Asia for the first time and loved it, and I hadn't left. Progressively over that time, I think the world of hospitality and the world of hospitality commercial organisations has changed. One, titles have changed. Two, organisation structures of hotels have changed. Invariably, historically, revenue managers in some companies reported into sales, in some companies reported into marketing, and now, 10 to 15 years later, actually a number of companies, revenue management actually is inverted. You have sales and marketing reporting in to revenue management, which for me back 10, 15 years ago was the natural evolution of where I saw it going, because it made no sense to me from a demand and supply perspective. Revenue management theoretically knew what we were hearing earlier. We knew where the demand was, we knew where the needs were. It seems slightly strange that it was inverted. So what I want to talk about is the future of the sales, marketing, revenue management roles and skill sets, but more just at a general level. But before getting into that, really just have a conversation about why are we where we are today. And I think it's important to understand why we are where we are today, is to understand what's kind of changed over the last 10 to 15 years. It's certainly in Asia Pacific. And you probably think the most apparent change in Asia Pacific over the last 10 to 15 years is just the explosive growth that we've seen in hotels around the region. I'm not going to quote numbers, but you can just think, you look at every single market we operate in around Asia Pacific, whether it's Tokyo, whether it's Sydney, whether it's Hongkong, whether it's wherever it might be. There are now significantly more hotels today than there were 10 to 15 years ago. We're now in a situation where certain hotel companies have up to 60 hotels in one city, let alone 10 years ago, 60 hotels in one country would have been aggressive. So things have significantly changed. And with that change has been the type of hotels we're opening and where they're opening. Of course, we're still opening hotels in primary cities, but as that growth is really concentrated in Asia Pacific, the growth is naturally starting to go into secondary and tertiary markets. And that has a massive impact on what we're going to talk about, skills required. As well as the physical changes we've seen, as a result of technology and what technology has enabled us to do, I would argue that every single role within the commercial discipline in hotels has changed over the last 10 years. And for some roles, have changed more than anyone could have ever imagined. If we look at sales, sales has moved from being very much relationship driven. Having fantastic relationships with our customers would enable you just to get sales on its own. Since procurement have come around over the last 15 years, 10 years, since now pretty much most of the major companies have procurement teams, which are just tasked to drive value into their business. It's no longer just good enough for a salesperson to be having a great skill of being a great relationship driver. They've got to be able to be communicative and be able to articulate to that company the value that they will bring to their organisation. If we look at marketing, marketing has changed beyond recognition. They have, in most countries, now moved, there's a few outliers, but across Asia Pacific, marketing has moved very much from being very offline, being very, very traditional in terms of how you go to market, with now obviously with digital, with technology, being much more online, not only about how you're reaching, but also how you're targeting, segmenting, and identifying your customers. That has, if you think about it from a marketeer's perspective, of someone who was worrying about how their content may appear in a brochure, which was going to be printed somewhere in a shop and translated to a customer, to where the customer is self-serving, that has fundamentally changed the type of person that you now need to hire at your hotel. And then in the world of revenue management, 20 years ago, revenue management really was only just beginning as an industry, and it certainly wasn't very complex. The internet was type of there, but it was very, very rudimentary. And actually, from a revenue management perspective, our life was very, very simple. It was a very, very opaque world. You could set a price, and you could pretty much guarantee that nobody else would find out about it. You would be able to set a price which would be sold publicly, and you could have a completely different price for another customer who you could sell privately to. And you could just do anything you wanted to, and to all intents and purposes, you could screw customers. You know, there was lots of articles about airlines, and you could be sat next to one person on one seat and next to another seat, and they'd pay completely different prices. Prior to the internet, there was no way for customers to be able to discern that type of information. With the internet now, it's completely transparent. And the reliance on hotel revenue management teams has actually had to, how do you navigate that world where there is complete transparency, but you have to move beyond just about it being price and commoditization. So whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's revenue management, across the whole industry over the last 10 to 15 years, the change has been massive. So the impact. When I started thinking about this, the impact for me that these changes have brought about are pretty large. The first one is competition for talent. As we have seen explosive growth across Asia Pacific, as now we have thousands of hotels across the region, the first consequence is, the number of people across the region is growing, but it's not growing at the same rate as we're growing hotels. Hotel companies are growing in the hundreds of % each year. We aren't able to generate talent fast enough to actually put talent into our hotels. So that's the first biggest problem. And also the other problem is technology, as we heard earlier. Technology is an enabler. If we're using technology properly, it's a real enabler for strength. But actually what it is causing is it's causing a divergence of people who are okay with technology with people who are great with technology. And what we're starting to see now is a big difference in how companies who are really able to adopt technology and use technology and then motoring ahead versus people and talent who are just okay with it. The second area, which has really come about as a result of secondary and tertiary markets, was this drought for talent. It's natural that the very best people in any industry will move to the primary cities. That's where the money is. Going back to the taxi driver scenario, that's just, people will gravitate towards either where they're used to being or where their opportunities to earn the most money is. So the best people, whether it's in revenue management, marketing or sales, will generally move towards the primary hubs, which is a problem for any hotel which is then opening a hotel in JB or in Bandung. You are going to struggle to find the best talent. So how do you solve that? How do you solve? You've still got to revenue manage that hotel, you've still got to market that hotel, you've still got to sell that hotel. That causes a massive problem. And then, as I was talking about earlier, the type of requirement for the skill sets is changing exponentially. Technology has changed everything. There are people out there who are very comfortable with technology, and there are people out there who are either frightened of technology and avoid it almost at all costs, or are just comfortable. And what you're seeing is this type of, I said it earlier, this divergence of skill sets, which is really becoming apparent when we're hiring people, because you're starting to have to test in very, very different ways. So, how does that materialize? From a sales perspective, sales teams have now had to become much more business orientated. Procurement have come in, technology has come into the sales equation. I can remember not that long ago if I looked across the sales population at Hilton, there was no technology. You know, you were asking people appointments, how many appointments they had on a weekly basis, or how much revenue was generated, how many room nights were being generated by certain companies. It was patchy as to what answers you were going to get. Whereas now, when you have Salesforce and technology everywhere, your first answer is, well, we're okay, we've got Salesforce everywhere. But the question is, how do we use it? That's still the big question for us and something we're challenging ourselves with. From a marketing perspective, and I talked about it earlier, they've moved from this analog world where you were just worrying about how do you make a hotel look pretty in a brochure and putting it out on a shelf somewhere, to this online world where it's just all digital. And I just think of ourselves at Hilton. You know, the type of people we're hiring into marketing now, we wouldn't have hired 10 years ago, for sure. And they wouldn't even call themselves marketing 10 years ago. They would have been e-commerce or something similar to that. And then in revenue management, and for me, revenue management, I'm going to be biased because that's where I come from. For me, this is a function which has probably gone the biggest change over the last 10 years. Revenue management 10 years ago have gone from essentially a bunch of geeks who sat in a room somewhere and just pored over a computer and were very articulate. And a lot of people, certainly in Hilton, a lot of people got jobs in revenue management because they were good with computers. That essentially was the only skill you had to have. You were comfortable with computers. Whereas now, the really good revenue managers are able to articulate what's going on and being able to express and convey to sales, marketing, the business as what we need to be doing, where we need to be doing it, and why we need to be doing it. So everybody's type of on this page. What was said earlier on, I 100% agree with. Yeah, we have a 5-year plan to keep us type of understanding where we're going from a true north perspective. But actually, you need to be reacting to the data points on a daily basis and actually changing direction. Still, you want to go towards that north, but you have to react to what's going on around you. Whereas 5 years ago, probably we didn't have that ability to do that. And that's where the reliance on revenue management, because they're the people who generally have access to the data today. So those are the type of three functions and how they've changed. But for me, and I do type of think this, you know, the change we've seen over the last 10 years is really just the beginning. I think we're probably now starting to approach the cusp of something which is going to be much bigger over the next 10 to 15 years than we've seen in the last 10 years. I type of think that change happens in cycles of 10 years. And every 10 years, a big thing happens. And we're going through it now. You know, the iPhone's been around for 10 years. It'll be soon that won't be the new thing. We're now into voice, whether it's Amazon or whatever it may be. And I type of think that's where we are from a hotel's perspective. The next change we're going to start seeing, what's got us to where we are is technology. That's great. And we've now got a bunch of people in hotels who are really good with technology. But actually, the biggest leapfrog is going to happen as a result of data. There is data everywhere, absolutely everywhere in hotels. But when I walk into hotels and I talk to people, what I'm amazed about is actually how we're using the data. And it's a big, big problem, and even for us. The skill sets that we're going to be hiring for in the next few years are going to be completely different. It's not going to be that far away before we have chief data officers everywhere. We've already got one within Hilton. We've got one in the US, chief data officer. It's not that far. It's not that difficult to imagine regional data officers in the very near future. You know, making sure that all of the data which is being collected is aggregated, is sorted, is segmented in the right way, but then is digested and communicated. We've got all this data everywhere, but very, very, very few teams are actually understanding what it's saying. And that's going to be the type of the next generation of skills for us. So it's really something just to think about is how can you, over the next few years, adjust for what's going on. It's not just the big companies. Any company can do it, whether it's an independent hotel to a big chain hotel. It's perfectly possible. It's completely accessible. It's not something you have to worry about maybe on your own. It could be, you can buy services. I think certainly we're very much of the opinion now with Hilton that whereas before we probably did everything ourselves, we're much more open to the idea of just, where it's not API, but it's similar to using the API scenario, buying services from outside. You want to get the best of what's available to you. It may not be under your flag. So, that's it from me. I hope that hopefully that's given you some type of insight into how I see the world of the commercial teams changing over